Hello, America. This is Robert Reese, and we're with Rick Rosenfield. How are you, Rick?
I'm great. Thank you, Robert.
And what a pleasure you're going to have. Everyone has heard of California Pizza Kitchen or CPK. They know the yellow that it stands for. So Rick is the co-founder, co-CEO, co-chairman, and and he actually wrote a book that I absolutely loved. He's one of the best writers I've ever seen. The way he tells stories is exceptional. But you're going to hear this story of how he changed, how he left as a federal prosecutor, and he started this, mortgaged his whole life for it. But so first, before we get into that, as founder, describe the concept of CPK.
It actually started as a pasta cafeteria that in one day, my partner Larry Flax and I, we were law partners, former federal prosecutors together, and then we were criminal defense attorneys for 12 or 13 years. We wanted to get out of law, and this was the start of the emergence of this California style pizza. So we decided we wanted to make it. It was created by Chez Panisse in Berkeley by Alice Waters, and then Wolfgang Puck introduced it to celebrities at Spago. And we saw this as a concept and an idea. And we thought, well, what if we take that, put that wood burning oven in the center of the kitchen, and make it accessible to family and neighborhoods across America? And that's how it started.
So I want to ask you, when you're starting California Pizza Kitchen, it actually, to me, I've interviewed, I think about 30 or 40 CEOs in similar tangential restaurant type spaces, but I think you were the founder of the concept of polished casual dining. And so you founded a whole new area in addition the way people eat pizza. But here's the thing I want to ask. You are you're a federal prosecutor. You're prosecuting against, who knows, the mafia, executives, the top. And that's very stressful. This is so different. How, just walk through what lessons you learned making that extraordinary pivot.
Well, we were so naive. I reflect now, I said, knowing everything I know now, would I have done it? And I have to honestly say, probably not. But we didn't know, right? So we jumped in this because we were these two clever lawyers and we love food, and like everybody wants to open a restaurant. That was us. We said we could make it successful, and we did it. The reason I say naively, we saw, oh, wow, we have a great concept. And then all of a sudden we were in business and we said, wait a minute, this is about our ability to manage people, and the concept will only get people in the door. It won't go any farther than that unless we figure this out.
And you completely mortgaged, you had to mortgage everything. And you went not knowing anything about the business. Even your chef, boy, that was some story you told about him, left. And what was the biggest challenge that when you look back, you say, we succeeded because of X?
We succeeded because we knew how to get people, how we knew how to build a teamwork of people that were committed to our quality and our standards. That is it. What you just hit upon when you say polished casual dining, that didn't exist. We didn't know that term. We did what we thought was that that every neighborhood, we only knew upscale neighborhoods. That's just how we were.
You
We
lived in
right
Beverly
we
Hills.
lived in Beverly Hills. We were in the lower end of Beverly Hills, not the higher end of Beverly Hills, but we understood this. We think we came at it with the eyes of customers. That's what gave us confidence. We're not
Mm.
chefs. We weren't restaurateurs. We were customers, and people who are customers and attentive say, here's what would make me happy in a restaurant, and here's what wouldn't. And somehow out of that, we got the confidence to do it. So what we learned though was all of a sudden now we had this chef. He lasted about a month or two. We got along like oil and water. He pulled off something. We had to fire him. And now we sat on it. We literally, my
Oh,
wife
he
Esther and I,
lied to you. He
oh,
snuck. He cheated. He it was
oh,
unbelievable, these stories. Wait till you read them,
right.
but keep going.
Right. I mean, so we all of a sudden we we he left us a situation where we had to terminate him. And we were in our law office, which we had moved right next door. And Esther, my wife, who was our co-founder, she doesn't get the credit, but she was the co-founder with Larry and I. And here we were. And you know what we did? We sat on the floor of my office and we cried. We were panicked. We said, now what are we going to do? Right? And we got ourselves back up and we figured it out.
Yeah. That's the whole story is one after another figuring out. But you mentioned something important and significant, which is people. So there's one name that really resonated with me in this, which is um, Julie Carruthers. And you met her when she was 23 years old, a waitress. Tell the story of what happened with her and her role. Because I think this, everyone listening in, and we've over 600,000 listeners, you're building a business, you need exceptional, not great, but exceptional people. She comes across as the best. Just tell what happened with her.
Julie was an unbelievable person. And what happened before here we come up with the concept, right? We had signed the lease. We just signed the lease within a week or two. And we were having lunch at a restaurant in Santa Monica. It was called Cutter's. And Julie happened to be our waitress. And she was exactly as we envisioned. And we told her, we said, we're starting a restaurant chain. Not that we're starting a restaurant, we're starting a
You
restaurant
said a
chain.
chain before you
We
even had your
did.
first.
We did. We did. We didn't go into to open a restaurant. We're going to give up our law practice to open a restaurant. In fact, my wife, who grew up in a diner, her father's diner, said, "Oh my God, I married a successful lawyer. Now you're going to go in the restaurant business." But she thought of it about her daddy working every day and every night, and her mom and her pitching in. And I said, "No, no, I want to create a restaurant that doesn't need us. Right? Not the one that I'm going to be in. I'm not interested in showing up at the restaurant every night, although we did most certainly at the beginning. But so Julie was perfect. She was so trained. She was so perfect. And we literally said, we're starting a restaurant chain. Will you come meet with us? And she came to our law office the next day. And I said, we didn't interview. Larry and I didn't do interviews. We did sales pitches. That's how we did. And we didn't know how to interview people, and we never did. What we did, we were always pitching what we were going to do to have people commit and come with us, right? And so we more convinced her than she convinced us. We were already convinced, but Julie was unbelievable. She accepted our offer. She was our first employee. She sat down and she started writing training manuals.
And
And
that
that's right.
amazes me
Right.
because you said that wasn't even her job, but she just took it upon. She took the initiative to write the training manuals and she became vice president of culture. Keep going.
Well, she did, and as it turned out, then she hired along with Esther. They hired our front of the house staff, and Esther went to work. My wife went to work as a hostess at the front every night, and customers came pouring in. Fortunately for us, when the Los Angeles Times reviewer came in, we were lucky, and she got Julie as a server. So we got a raving review of our food and our service. But more importantly, Julie became an industry leader at a time that this was all developing of casual, full service, upscale dining was developing. And she became a national leader in chart. And as you know from the book, unfortunately, she
Yeah.
developed a very serious cancer, lost her leg in an amputation. I mean, horrible. And but by that point, she had become vice president of the company. As I said, was an industry leader, and such an essential component of our success all the pieces came together, and Julie was as important as anybody in our history.
So that is some story, Rick, about a Julie like that to build their culture. And that is what your whole story is about, building this incredible culture. It wasn't just the pizza. We're about to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear more from Rick about this remarkable story. Back in a few. Hi, this is Robert Reese. I'm with Rick, who is the co-founder, co-CEO of California Pizza Kitchen. And I do want to tell all of you, you got to read this book because he just wrote, it's really his life story. But I have to tell you, Rick, I've read well over 1,000 business books. You're one of the best writers. You've such a humanistic style. I never would have guessed you were a lawyer from your writing.
My God, there is some truth to that.
So I want to ask about a transformative moment that you had in your life, and one that comes to mind is you've so many you could tell. So I was going to ask you to tell one, but I'm not going to. You tell me another transformative moment that you learned the lesson, because all of us CEOs are trying to learn how to pivot, how to get to the next level.
Well, I think the first thing we learned is that when we had to terminate the chef, and now we had in the history of this restaurant industry at that time, 40 years ago, the front of the house and the back of the house seemed to have a DNA difference. They just didn't get along. And let's say for exactly what it was. It was cultural. The back of the house was Hispanic males predominantly, but principally, and then the front was Caucasian, right? And there was a clash that went on at that point, and Larry and I looked at that and we said, this is not going to work. Okay. And so we had such respect for both sides, right? So we developed before we understood the word culture. We didn't know culture. Later we can talk about where it evolved because it's an important part of our story. At that time we didn't know the word culture, but we knew we had to get along. So what we said was the California Pizza Kitchen is going to be color blind, religion blind, gender blind, education blind. We don't care who you are or what your background was. You, if you're committed to our success, then we are all going to get together as a team. That was our first lesson. It literally was. And then Larry, as you may recall from the book, was a very big, imposing guy. And Beverly Hills was a very tiny little restaurant. So we put him in as an expediter right between the front and the back of the house, right? And people had to squeeze around him, but he was there to literally make sure that pizza that we used to call auctioning off the food. The pizza, barbecue chicken pizza would come up and the server would grab it, whether it was theirs or not. We had to learn all these things. We were hands on.
Yeah, and I know that you're a keynote speaker and obviously a tremendous storyteller. You created this culture called Rock, ROCK, and this was before you were doing this 20 years before anyone was focusing on culture. Dr. Larry Sen actually was the founder of corporate culture, and you were just a few years after he was when he created the concept. So you didn't know, but talk about how you did that. And like when you give your keynotes, share something that people could learn of how they could build a great corporate culture.
Well, that was a period when PepsiCo bought two-thirds of us. And they were pushing us, and now we had corporate people coming in, and they were saying, you guys need to come up with a mission statement. Like what we said. They said, well, like selling more pizzas than anybody in the world. We said, that's not our mission. Besides, you own Pizza Hut at that point. It's like, no,
Right.
we're not. It was never our mission to sell more pizzas than anybody in the world. And that isn't really what we're about. So Larry and I, we sat in our common conference room between our offices, and we said, what's really important to us? As we were already in it 5 or 6 years, right? And maybe we had 30, probably around 30 restaurants, I would guess at the point. And we said, well, respect, right? Opportunity, communication, right? So those make sense. respect communication, respect working both ways, communication working both ways. And then we said, well, we respect opportunity, community. Oh, pay for kindness. Right. There it is. There's the glue that held it together. Kindness. That's what Larry and I were from the beginning. We wanted kind people around us. And what we learned and what everybody understands instinctively is about the weakest link breaking a chain. If somebody is in your organization, if somebody's in the restaurant that's working and they are not kind and they are a problem, nobody wants to come to work, right? But when you surround yourself with kind people, then everybody wants to come to work. So rock worked, and then coincidentally, not because we created a crazy slogan or anything, we all of a sudden we had rock stars, right? And we,
Oh, I love
right,
it.
right, and we did, and honestly, it sounds trite, but it was organic. We didn't think of it that way, and now we're giving rock star awards, right? So all of that, and then the people that each month in every restaurant they would choose the employee of the month, so to speak, and give them a rock star awards. That's how it evolved, but it was actually real. So the success of CPK was that people love to work. We called ourselves a work with, not a work for company. Before people said that, I think. I'm not sure. I don't say that we originated. We felt we were pretty early with that in any event. And that's how, people love coming to work. And our employees loved it. If people would ask, where are you working? So I work at CPK, and people's normal response is, it must be a lot of fun to work there. That was our
Because they
secret.
see the open kitchen, the flavors. No one had ever done anything like you did with the barbecue chicken. But then eventually, once the chef was out, you start building your own salads and everything. But here's what I want to ask. You had a secret sauce, and your secret sauce was really the culture and the kindness and the courage that you guys had to do what you did and throw everything away on a dream. If someone is listening in and they're an entrepreneur, they have a mid-sized company, maybe with a couple of hundred people, how do they get that amazing product? How do they then build that culture around them? And you already gave a lot of the secrets, but I just want you to give this as sort of a little bit of a final advice to everyone.
Well, that is